Good morning, friends. My name is Ashok Malik. I'm chair of the Asia Group here in India. On behalf of the organizers and the Global Research Foundation, welcome to this morning's event. We've just concluded a mesmerizingly successful G20 summit, and the man of the moment, the Indian Sherpa for the G20 presidency, Mr. Amitabh Kant, is with us. This G20 summit and this G20 year really was very successful because it brought to the heart of the G20 process a number of developmental and socio-economic themes that have been troubling global society in the past few years, and especially the global south. These included climate finance and transitions, sustainable development goals, the post-COVID health recovery, access to digital public infrastructure in a transparent and open source manner, technology access to underprivileged societies and underprivileged groups. All of these themes were tackled and mentioned in the G20 joint communique of the Delhi Declaration. A cross-cutting theme across all of these, implicating all of these sectors, was gender. And the role of women, the deprivation that women have suffered in a pre-G20, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, pre-disruption of global supply chains period, and how this should not be allowed to continue into a new paradigm that this G20 process has initiated. That is what we're here to discuss today. That's what this book is all about. But before we begin the discussion, before we dive into the book, I'd like to invite Mr. Amitabh Kant to speak about the G20 process and what it had brought to the fore for all of us, particularly from the dimension of gender and women. Mr. Kant, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malik, Mr. Shumbi Sharp, Vaishali Nigam, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm truly delighted to be here at the launch of this remarkable book which is being published today. We've just concluded our Leaders Summit of the G20 presidency. The Leaders Summit has adopted the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, and this declaration comprises of 83 paras, and all 83 paras have a full consensus from all countries across the board. So this is the 83 paras also include the geopolitical issues. There's 100% consensus without any reservation, without any brackets, without any chair summary on all the paras of the New Delhi Leaders Statement, which to our mind demonstrates India's huge ability to bring developing countries, the emerging markets, the developed world, and Russia, China all together to the table and bring an agreement on all developmental issues. There were several challenges as we went along, but we were able to overcome each one of them, whether it was on climate, whether it was on energy, whether it was on the issue of women-led development itself, and whether it was on geopolitical issues. All these issues we were able to bring the world together. So what India has demonstrated is that multilateralism has come center stage today because of this document, and it's probably one of the most powerful documents which G20 has ever produced, and I would request all of you, particularly many students who are here, to read it thoroughly to understand the power of what the leaders have said in this New Delhi Leaders Statement. But one thing, one theme which runs through this entire document is the huge focus on Global South. The Global South, it's a document of the Global South in G20. It's a voice of the developing and the emerging markets in this entire document. And nowhere, in no other document which has come out of any multilateral institution has the voice of Global South been spoken so strongly as this particular document has done. And secondly, I don't think any document in any multilateral institution has spoken so strongly about women empowerment and gender equality and women-led development as this particular document has done. And I think it's a cross-cutting theme across all sectors that in addition to the fact that it occupies a very major place, women-led development, women empowerment, gender equality occupies a very major space in the document. And it cuts across all sectors. And it was important to do this because we really felt that it will not be possible to have sustained strong and inclusive growth over a long period of time without women. It was our belief, India's belief, and India's leader, Prime Minister's belief that women-led development has to come center stage. Because it was our feeling, as one of the World Economic Forum report says, that it'll take 132 years to bring gender parity. 132 years to bring gender parity. We do not have 132 years. Whatever we have to do it in a decade, and therefore it's critical that we are able to bring in all aspects of gender equality, put women in leadership position. Even the issue of women-led development was debated and discussed for a very long time, but India really fought about putting women in positions of leadership. And eventually, I think all the G20 recognized the significance and importance of it. But G20 document really recognizes the significance of women's education, of financial inclusion, of equal opportunities, particularly bringing in financial inclusion for women through the digital public infrastructure. A very crucial aspect of the advancement and empowerment of women is ensuring their financial inclusion, because in India, when we started the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, only 17% of the women had bank accounts. Today, we've been able to provide bank accounts to almost 86% of the women. But globally, almost half, that is just 42% of women and girls, remain outside the formal financial systems. And with a persistent 7% gender gap, we've made remarkable progress in this area. Nearly 86% of urban women and 77.4% of rural women in India own a bank account, which they operate themselves. I think during my own tenure as CEO of Niti Aayog, when we were doing this aspirational district program in some of the most backward districts of India, we didn't call them backward, we called them aspirational. One of the key tasks was really about ensuring financial inclusion by opening their bank accounts. But I've been a long-term believer that education plays a vital role. Improving learning outcomes is critical. Women still account for almost two-third of all adults unable to read, and with 54% of the total 78 million out-of-school children being girls. So just imagine, 54% of the total 78 million out-of-school children being girls. It is a huge concerted and coordinated effort has to be made. I am also a strong believer that, the cause of much of this, whether it's poor learning outcomes or poor health outcomes for women, is a cause of the fact that there's a huge malnutrition in India. And this malnutrition is actually a cause of a weak mother giving birth to a weak child, and it's a very vicious cycle of a weak mother, and our inability to track and look after the women right from the time we discover pregnancy, and the pregnancy is discovered in rural areas very late. So we need to break this very vicious and this virtuous cycle of malnutrition to be able to have strong mothers who are able to give birth to strong children who are not stunted, and then that will lead to a hugely beneficial eventually improvement in health outcomes, improvement in learning outcomes. And therefore, my belief is that if India is to grow at high rates over a next 3-decade period at very high rates, then women have to be the key driver. And without focusing on malnutrition, without improving health outcomes, without improving education outcome, without bridging the digital gender divide, and without, there are many other issues of climate and gender and so on. I don't even want to get into them. But in the Indian context, it's absolutely necessary that we tackle it at the grassroots level through Anganwadis and Asha workers, track every single pregnant woman, track every single child from the time of pregnancy, and ensure that we are able to have very healthy mothers to have healthy children. And that it will lead to essentially a huge improvement in learning outcomes and health outcomes. So if India takes the lead and does it, then the world will follow. And it will not be possible for India to grow at high rates. Whatever may be our ambitions of being an advanced country, it will all dependent on women, to my mind, and our ability to empower women and girls in all these programs. And therefore, I'm truly delighted that ORF has come out with this Pathways to Equality, Advancing Gender Goals in the G20. G20 has attempted to do its best for women and girls during India's presidency. We've fought many battles, we've fought many challenges to ensure that this becomes the centerpiece of our document of the New Delhi leaders' statement, and it remains cross-cutting all through all other subjects and disciplines, and that is what we've managed to do. So I would request all of you to kindly take it forward, and as the Prime Minister said that we will have a virtual G20 later. So what we will do in the next 2.5 months is really to push the implementation of what we have recommended through all states, all countries during this period, so that whatever we have recommended gets implemented on ground. It's not about just making a declaration, but it's about cracking it on ground, which we'll do very vigorously with full force at our command. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm really delighted that this wonderful publication has been done here. I'm truly delighted to be a part of this. Thank you very much.